What's up, everybody? Welcome into M&M Across the Board. Ashley Miller, Eric McDowell, Sean Martin with you as we are every week. And guys, it is playoff time. It's NBA playoff time. It's NHL playoff time. But there's never a time that you don't want to talk college sports, right?
No.
And
Always.
NIL is the never-ending, always evolving subject. So we've got a guest this week, and that's where we're going to start. And it revolves around the world of NIL. Eric, take it away, man.
Well, first, we missed you guys last week. Great job. So I got to wear the M&M hat because you couldn't find a third M last week. So
all right,
this is in tribute to your work last week, and thanks to Gardner as well. So welcome to Dan Green, who will tell us what he's doing now with his firm, but he's now basically an expert speaking to a lot of people about the uncharted waters of NIL, unlike NHL. And Dan is familiar to us, all three of us, for his work at Union College. He was with the hockey program. He was the director of everything but coaching, is the best way to put it. Dan, we're very happy for you for the career that you've now embarked on with your Union degree. You were part of the program as it embarked at a national title. So, Dan, tell us about your firm now and what you're focusing on as well.
Yeah, thank you all for having me here. It's awesome to reconnect with all of you in the Capital Region. I work for a law firm called Newman & Lichtenstein, just down I-90 in Syracuse. Our core practice is corporate and business work, but we've had this really cool niche practice in entertainment and sports, especially esports and gaming, and now with name, image, and likeness coming about over the past 10-ish months, we've delved into that as well. Just a perfect crossover for us, but there's so much going on the legal end of name, image, and likeness that it's just wild, and it's been fun to follow and connecting with people and speaking to people like you about my favorite topic right now.
Is it, Dan, how do you think it's gone, first and foremost? Because it seems to me on a peripheral, the NCAA might not have thought some of this stuff through with some of the things going on. And where do you sit right now as this is kind of still going?
Yeah, I think people in the NIL space always call it the wild, wild west. You can read any article, watch any podcast, and that's the one term everybody uses. And it's been pretty wild. And the big part of it is that the NCAA, once they allowed NIL in college sports, they kind of gave these bare bones parameters, which was kind of can be interpreted in many different ways and created sort of free for all. And for basically the past 10 months, they haven't really enforced any of their policies, rules, or regulations. They've come out and said that they're going to start doing that. We'll see how that's going to be, which is going to be a real test of how much power the NCAA has over this subject at this point. But it's been crazy. There's been a lot of debate about whether it's going right, it's going wrong, what needs to be fixed, and then what everything's going to look like moving forward.
Dan, you're in Syracuse. So for those of us from New York, which is the three of us are in New York now, four of us are in New York now, every state can be different. Can you kind of explain the challenges that presents and that each state can have different laws when it comes to NIL and how the NCAA can then regulate from there? Because I think it is confusing in some ways to a lot of people.
Yeah, the whole difference between the state laws has created even more of a mess. If anything, it's created an arms race between the states, especially in SEC country. So the NCAA policy, they say you follow our policy, and if you're in a state that has a state law, you follow that as well. So just to bring things back, before July 1st of last year, a lot of states were pushing for legislation on the NIL front to kind of pressure the NCAA into permitting NIL on their end. That push from state legislatures, along with the Supreme Court decision in the Alston case, really pushed the NCAA over the edge. But what happened is that when the NCAA's policy came out, as I said, it was pretty bare bones, and some of these state laws that came out were even more restrictive than the NCAA policy. So states without a law, their students and schools were at more of an advantage than those that actually had the law who were trying to push for this movement to begin with. So over the past 6 or so months, we've seen like a state like Alabama repeal its law altogether. They're still allowed to do NIL, but they don't have to follow any of the restrictions they imposed last summer. Any of other states like Mississippi and Tennessee revised their laws to permit more interaction with their schools that help their students to be more involved. So that's kind of been my focus recently about what different states are doing on the legislative side, and I expect to see more revisions from that end moving forward.
Well, we've talked a lot about the transfer portal here, and it's almost a portal like opening up a portal in a submarine underwater. Doesn't work out too well in many cases. I think most of it was probably due to the fact that they want players, of a new coach to make some changes. They can do it their own thing. But talk about the transfer portal's effect on NIL and vice versa, because you're going to have a lot of haves that are going to have more haves than the have-nots, because kids are going to look for better NIL opportunities.
Yeah, it's really been the perfect storm with NIL and the transfer portal coming around at the same time. This is definitely the athlete empowerment movement era, and I think it's great. I think it's great that these that student athletes can have the opportunity to transfer with less restrictions. The big concern here is the combination between transfer portal and NIL is whether that creates any sort of inducements. You see people who are part of collectives or that are boosters, like on Twitter, basically saying like, oh, we're getting this transfer and we signed into an NIL deal. And you're thinking, how does that booster get with that player who is still at another school? Are they connected? And how do you know if the coach of that team even wants that player? So that's really been the big issue. I think that's the big issue that's facing the NCAA right now. That's the thing they are most concerned about, is making sure there's no improper recruiting inducements amongst those in the portal, as well as high school athletes, which has become a big issue as well.
Yeah, I think, Dan, initially when this was created, obviously you used the term athlete empowerment, student athlete empowerment. And that was the purpose, so that when your jersey is getting sold, you are benefiting from that in some way. When you're signing your autograph, you're benefiting that in some way. But it's gone from like the small, star athletes sponsoring local businesses to basically, like you used the term collective, and it was a word that I read a lot about. There are these huge crowdfunding models that are generating 10, 20, $30 million with the goal of literally paying a student athlete on the football team a $50,000 salary. And they're very open when it comes to that. Well, we've basically gone from NIL back to the original problem, which is pay for play.
Right. I've called it recently that we're testing this true spirit of NIL.
Yeah.
Like, as you said, the real NIL movement was about getting your name on a jersey and getting a cut, signing autographs, things like that. It doesn't mean that the other bigger endorsements are wrong, but there are certain endorsement setups, especially through like collectives, where you kind of look at it and you're like, that's just a fancy way of saying we're going to pay you for coming to our school.
Mm-hmm.
There's like with collectives, they all come in different shapes and sizes. Some schools have numerous amounts. Some are focused on certain sports, certain positions. And, the big thing here is, if you want to start a collective or you're running a collective, is how do you want to do it? Do you want it to be, are you more concerned about the student athletes getting paid for actually performing some sort of work, or do you just want them to come to your school and make your team better?
Yeah, Dan, like you talk about, that had its purpose, okay, but for every Paige Beckers who gives back some of her money, you have Isaiah Wong down at University of Miami basketball, comes out on April 28th, basically saying the school's got to get him more NIL money or he's out of there. He's going to go to the portal. Now, they walked it back the next day, but that to me almost makes any NCAA regulation null and void, because it is the wild, wild west. Because how do you enforce it once you open that door?
I'm glad you brought up that the Wong situation in Miami. Miami's kind of been at the forefront of this whole NIL issue. They have a booster that's leading, some sort of collective through his businesses down there that's really signed on to a lot of student athletes that come to Miami to be at Miami. And the Isaiah Wong situation was also kind of unfortunate in the sense that I think it sounds like Isaiah didn't really want his agent to make a statement like that, and I think it was a great, maybe a good lesson for other student athletes out there that you have to really trust who's on your team, whether it be an agent, a family member, or an attorney. They need to have the best interest in mind, because we're talking about Isaiah Wong for this NIL fiasco, but he's a great basketball player, just made a big run in the NCAA tournament, and it's kind of overshadowing that at this point. But I think it goes to the point that you really don't know what's happening behind the scenes unless it's investigated. And I think that sort of situation was one of the reasons why the NCAA has come out and said we're going to start taking action. My guess is they will take a look at whatever's going on in Miami, because they're so high profile in what they've been doing.
Now, in your role at the college, you dealt a lot with parents, families, which was a good thing, and it sure can help you now, Dan, because tell us about the relationship that you're going to have here with dealing with parents, families, agents, all of these people that are looking to control the individual. You know, the families love the player and all that, love the student, etc. But there's so many different people you have to deal with and try to get them all on the same page, because these kids could make mistakes if they don't get some good guidance.
Yeah, it's all about creating a good team around you. Especially, if you have supportive parents, knowledgeable parents that want to be involved, that's awesome. But at the same time, just in your regular business, like in my legal work, if there's a topic that I don't know much about, should reach out to somebody that knows it. I'm not a huge international law person, so if anybody comes to me with international or immigration type of questions, I point them in the direction of somebody else. If a parent's helping out their son or daughter, and they have questions about legal stuff or trademarks or marketing, they should really reach out to a qualified agent or attorney to help them there, because if things don't go well, it's the athlete that's going to be punished and face the worst consequences. And that's the last thing you want here, because the kids just want to play sports at the end of the day.
Right.
Dan, when we talk about further guidance from the NCAA, I know that was kind of, I think, last week or maybe the week before that came out. That specifically refers to all of the NIL stuff in terms of the recruiting process, though, right? That's really where they want to avoid any muddied waters, because it feels like after they're signed, sealed, and delivered to XYZ college, what can you do to differentiate, whether or not they're doing something to make the money or they're just playing the sport to make the money? I think it's a lot harder to kind of wade through that than it would be to say, well, this kid's not even committed to you yet. How is he or she making money?
Yeah, so the new guidance that the NCAA came out with really wasn't, I wouldn't call it new guidance. It was more of a reminder to everybody that you can't be inducing players that are in the transfer portal at other schools or high school students to come to your school. There can't be any sort of recruiting inducement. So I wouldn't really call it like a new or guidance. Everybody was waiting around on Twitter, waiting for it to come out that day, and it comes out, and everybody was like, "This is nothing."
We knew it. Yeah.
There's nothing new. We already know this stuff. But I think it also signals that the NCAA is finally taking an interest in enforcing its policies, which is the big thing here.
Is there any loopholes that you see in your knowledge on this that you would recommend to the NCAA to help close some of this stuff? Because now, especially with the transfer portal, like we've talked about, you have Jordan Addison wins the Blitnikoff Award at Pitt. Lincoln Riley goes to USC, and then Pat Narduzzi's calling Lincoln Riley, screaming at him because he's getting recruited by different players and all that stuff. Does all this tie in to possible, or?
I wouldn't say that loophole is the right word, but the NCAA needs to enforce its rules. The rules are out there, and they have to enforce them by investigating certain issues that seem on its face to be impermissible. And unless they really start doing that, we're going to see the craziness that's happening right now. And there hasn't been any sort of public investigations that have come out yet with any sort of results or processes, but it'll be interesting to see if they actually do start going after certain schools or athletes or collectives. I think it'll be more that the schools and the collectives that will be punished more than the athletes, or at least I hope so. But NCAA has to do their job. at this point, and they got to embrace what is happening here in this student empowerment movement. Part of the reason why we've got here and it's been so crazy is that they've pushed back and rejected it for so long, and now that they've thrown their hands up, they have a big problem on their hands that they're one of the main parties that can fix it.
Well, I was fortunate to go to the NCAA many times, Dan, and co-sided leadership roles, and we were involved in creating. They never even had lacrosse statistics handbooks, which is amazing. That was something much easier to create than this. The question is, of course, now there will be new leadership with the NCAA coming. There's many people that have been departing, and there'll be a new president coming probably this summer. The question is, will there be a sea of legal activity for any type of official handbook put in place? In other words, they had always worked about making sure it was an amateur athlete. They know that's not going to happen anymore. But can a book be put together strictly on NIL, and will it constantly face legal challenges? That's the question, because then there's no teeth to the book.
Yeah, I mean, any sort of guidance or policies created on NIL that the NCAA can create would be helpful. A part of the reason why everything's so difficult right now is because there really isn't much out there to know what's right or wrong. That's why it's important for the athletes to have a good team around them that can guide them. This is a new space. There's no real person with tremendous experience out there that has been here and done that. When it comes to the NCAA leadership, hopefully whoever comes in and takes the place over there has a new voice and has it, is a little more progressive in how this is all going to work. And if the NCAA tries to create more restrictions, they will open themselves up to further legal challenges here, especially in the wake of the Alston decision, which I won't really get into. It's a lot of boring legal stuff. You can read the 1 million-page Supreme Court decision, but any sort of real restrictions they put on athletes being able to receive compensation could be challenged in court.
I know Sean brought up Isaiah Wong as a name that came to kind of the top of everyone's mind. I think yesterday or the day before was Earl Timberlake, a guy who started at Miami, played one season, was injured, transferred to Memphis, got that one-time waiver to play for Memphis, and is now transferring to Bryant, where he again got an NCAA waiver to play again. Can the NCAA, listen, I know you don't want to restrict kids from playing, but it's supposed to be a one-time waiver for a reason. Can they dig their heels in and really kind of hold people to sitting out a season to discourage transferring, like the kind of stuff that's happening? I mean, there are people just like flooding. Bryant's going to have 8 transfer players at this point to go play for that team.
Yeah, I'm not as familiar with his situation. I don't know if there's any sort of family reason or waiver for that one. But the argument,
he was injured his freshman year, so I'm assuming that would have been why, but I don't know why he got the second year.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like Bryant is a huge basketball powerhouse, even though if I remember correctly, they either beat or gave Syracuse a good run for their money in the Dome was it last year?
Yeah, they went to the tournament last year.
Yeah, so
they're moving up in a conference, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, good for them. Shows what I know about Bryant. My apologies to all the big Bryant fans out there. But I mean, the argument always stands that coaches can move as they please, and they get paid millions and millions of dollars. So athletes should be able to move into a situation that's best for them without facing any sort of penalty. And I think that's a perfectly good argument.
Yeah, it's a tough argument. Like I sympathize with the coaches that do stay, that have to rework their roster with this. And when I think of transfers, I think of Luke McCaffrey, who played 2 years at Nebraska, left, went to Louisville, lost out on the starting quarterback gig there, left, was at TCU. Who knows? Maybe he's at Bryant now. I don't know. He's been all over the place. Christian McCaffrey's younger brother. It seems like it's a little too much. Again, my sympathy is with the coaches that I deal with.
Yeah.
Specifically one in our capital region with the hockey team I cover. He had to rework his whole program last year, and now he's having to do it again this year with 7 or 8 or 9 guys already gone.
Yeah, I mean, I know with some of the coaches I've spoken to in this new era, you're recruiting the athletes to campus, you get them to campus, and then you're recruiting them again to stay on campus, which is, created that makes their jobs a lot harder. It remains to be seen which coaches are able to adapt, whether there's new types of coaching techniques and personalities that come out to help in that type of situation. You see a coach like Jay Wright in Villanova, who just retired out of nowhere. Perhaps has to do something with just the difficulties of this new era. He's come out and said he seems to be in favor of the whole NIL movement, but I don't envy any of these college coaches right now. Their job has gotten a lot harder, more than just doing X's and O's and recruiting before the kids get to campus.
Yeah, I think the biggest problem I have with it is so Sean, you mentioned a guy who lost out on the starting job. Well, 10 years ago, that wasn't a good enough reason to transfer. Guys were a little bit tougher and stayed and tried to win back the starting job. So for me, that's a bad excuse for a transfer. And in terms of coaches leaving, I get it. Like, coaches are free to leave. They get paid. They're also in like a pay for play different category. I'm okay with kids being set free of their commitment if a coach they committed to leaves. But again, at what point do you draw the line where you committed to this coach, he's still here, you lost out on a starting job, or you're not playing enough, you can't just up and leave and pout. I understand it's a gray area, but at some point you have to draw some sort of lines and make it clear, there are certain reasons you can get a waiver for, there are certain reasons you can't.
Yeah, I mean, just in my experience, when you started getting in nuanced situations, it's hard to really It's really hard to pick and choose what's good and what's not. If a head coach leaves, okay, you're allowed to transfer. But what if it's the assistant defensive line coach that you're really close with when you're on campus, and they leave? Are you allowed to leave then? It's hard. It's hard. I think college sports has evolved into such a commercial enterprise, and from the youth level all the way up. And I think a lot of people are in favor of athletes being able to move freely as much as they feel is necessary or best for their situation. But it goes either way. I can see it on both sides.
Yeah.
Senior day used to be so much fun. Now senior days, Dan, would have been like your senior year. You would have been the only one on the ice or in the basketball. Congrats on a great career of 6 months here at our institution. So, last thing for me. Tell us, you've never talked about yourself. You're always about everybody, but just tell us, for those folks that are watching, with their kids or thinking about how this person can help, tell us what you and your firm can do to help these people in this NIL situation.
Yeah, my firm is called Newman and Lichstein. You can find that at newmanandlichstein.com in Syracuse. We have a lot of great talent here when it comes to corporate contract, trademarks, everything name, image, and likeness. Prior to this college athletics NIL movement, we do a lot of stuff with some of the biggest names in esports and gaming and influencer marketing. It's the same type of stuff. It's name, image, and likeness for gamers. That's we're fully equipped. As I said, nobody has real NIL college athletics experience, but we've got it as close as anybody as possible. We're located upstate New York, so depending what you believe is upstate New York. I know it's a big debate, probably for a whole nother episode of the podcast. But we always love dealing with local people here. And for me personally, I do a lot of tracking and commentary on social media. My Twitter account is Dan Green with an E15. I also do some stuff on LinkedIn as well. You can find me there. And same with some stuff on our website as well.
Hey, Dan, real quick, get away from the NIL for a second. I know you had a disappointing year with the Islanders. I'm in mourning with the Bruins. Who's your Stanley Cup pick for the rest of the playoffs?
Colorado for sure. They seem to be a machine that cannot be stopped. It seems like the Eastern teams are going to beat each other up, and I think there might be whoever that ends up being. They're going to be too beaten up with Colorado just waiting there, just to pounce on them. But I've been wrong before, and my guess is I'll be wrong again. If I was a betting man, which I'm really not, I'd put my money on Colorado.
Very good.
Nobody on this podcast is wrong.
Of course.
We always know it. Hopefully.
All right, Dan,
thank you so much for your insights. Really cool, really helpful. And check Dan out if you're interested in being a part of, or, you know, I don't know, taking advantage of a name, image, and likeness situation, hit up Dan. He can help you out. Even down. Listen, you're in the backyard of my alma mater. I got to imagine that'll keep you busy. The good old SU.
Yep, I'm an SU law grad. I bleed orange as well. It's a great school. It's a great town, and happy to help answer any questions anybody has regarding this space or any sort of NHL playoff predictions as well.
Congrats on your career. Very happy for you, Dan.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, great seeing you, buddy.
Thank you. I appreciate your time and for the invite, and I hope to see you guys all soon.
All
Sounds
right.
good. Thanks, Dan.
Take care, Dan.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Hey, it's that time of the show this spring. As you know, it's starting to get hot out there. It's the perfect time to get top dollar for your trade-in with the Kelley Blue Book Instant Cash Offer. Same day check in your hand the day you trade in your vehicle. The new vehicles inventory continues to roll in at Mohawk Honda. To follow the newest vehicles coming in, follow Mohawk Honda on their Facebook, Twitter, and social media platforms. All of Mohawk Honda sales and leasing consultants will work with you to find the best vehicle for your budget and lifestyle. So visit Mohawk Honda in Glenville, New York this spring. Mohawk Honda, where they always go out of their way to please you. And also, folks, don't forget the Albany Empire are back home this Saturday night at MVP Arena. Godzilla Media has the pregame show starting at 3:30. Tickets are available at the game at albanyempirenal.com.
Not to be confused with NIL.
Correct.
Or NLI, which is the letter you sign before you go play for a specific school.
Yes.
They couldn't have made it any more tricky if they tried.
And then transfer out when the competition gets too thick.
Yeah, right. All right, where are we going? NBA, NHL?
Yeah, let's
Your choice first.
Let's go NBA.
Yeah, NBA. Biggest surprise of the NBA playoffs, maybe not who is through, but the fact that we had 2 Game 7s and they were both total snooze fests.
Wow.
May I address this first, please?
Go right ahead.
The absolute gutless performance of every single person in the Phoenix Suns organization.
Oh,
I flipped that game on in the second quarter and it was like 13. And before I blinked and before I turned the channel, it was 30.
mm-hmm.
And Chris Paul's taken just a beating in the national media. I think Devin Booker deserves as much because he ran his mouth a lot before Game 7. And DeAndre Ayton reportedly, when he got pulled after his 17 ineffective minutes, Monty Williams, who's pretty soft-spoken, said, "You quit on us." And he's upset about his contract. It's Game 7. And I'm trying to think of a bigger disappointment in a Game 7 history in sports, and I can't come up with one. Because this was a team 8 games clear of anybody else in the NBA on its home floor. And they didn't show up. They didn't have a chance. I just can't remember anything like it.
I think, as what you said, maybe it is all time because it was totally unpredictable. Losing at 33 at home. The Suns are cloudy. The Suns have set. I can see all the headlines. But like you said, Paul and Booker, 7 for 22, 21 total points. They won 64 games this year and lost the last 2 playoff games to Dallas by a total of 60 points. You talk about head should roll. Of course, I picked them to win the thing, but actually it seemed like I wanted Chris Paul to win the title more than he did.
Yeah, and listen, I feel like Chris Paul is getting a little too much of what happened. And listen, he was 4 for 8 from the floor. You will probably take that almost every night from anyone on your team. He doesn't shoot the ball a lot. That's not his game. It's not like when he goes out and scores 30, that's kind of an anomaly. So for me, it's not that like 4 for 8's not bad, and that's not unusual for him. For me, Devin Booker was worse. DeAndre Ayton was worse. The fact that no one was out more than 12 points, but also the numbers that Dallas put up were absolutely absurd. So maybe it's the defensive effort we should knock more than anything. The Mavs shot 57% from the floor, 49% from 3, and 100% from the foul line. You're going to win every single game if you shoot those numbers, every single one of them.
Look, it was defensive effort, offensive effort. It wasn't there. There was no fire, no passion. Mm-hmm. But who do you bang? Monty Williams is the NBA Coach of the Year, right? He's a fantastic coach by all accounts. I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's on everyone.
Yeah.
It's on everybody.
Yeah, I just think CP3 is getting a little too much of, like, he's not the game. I know he got paid a lot of money. he's not the guy that you need to go score 30 a game for them to win. It's the other guys who didn't do that who you can, and he doesn't play a ton of defense anyway.
But even still, 8 shots, I would think he'd have to have a little more. He's the facilitator. He's the guy that keeps it going.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right. I think he's taking a little too much heat. I have a friend of mine I've mentioned on the show that absolutely hates Chris Paul. I've never heard him so happy as he was Monday morning.
Why?
His response to me was, he just hates Chris Paul. His response to me was, he gets most of the credit when they lose, so he gets most of the credit when they get blown out.
Most of the credit when they win?
When they win, sorry.
Yeah. I don't think he does. That's the difference. Like, Chris Paul is old. He's not the star of that team. I know he's making star money, but he's never the guy that I'm like, oh, there was one game where he had a breakout game where I thought, well, he's the reason they won. But generally, it's the other guys that I'm like, well, they're the reason they won. He just has to not turn the ball over and be good enough. So that's why I don't feel like he should be taking as much of the heat. But
and your other game blowout.
Yeah. And Giannis was really good. I memean, really good. 25 is quiet for him, but he did everything else. The numbers that he racked up in that game were really good. But yeah, I could never have imagined seeing either scenario play out. And that goes for the other way. I couldn't have seen the blowouts going the other way. I couldn't have seen the Suns blowing out the Mavs, even on the Suns' home floor. And I didn't see Milwaukee getting blown out by the Celtics in Game 7, despite the fact that we had a couple lopsided games.
Yeah, it was, the Celtics, I picked to win it. A little concerned with the injury, Marcus Smart and Al Horford. Now there's a shot of him in a team huddle yesterday afternoon coughing, and then the whole COVID thing hits him.
I was going to say.
Hopefully it's something bad doesn't happen to the Celtics here. But you got to give Boston credit. They just took the Bucks right out of it.
Yeah.
And they were just too much for them.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I thought a team in the league could do that to Milwaukee.
Well, he did shoot 40%, had 11 turnovers and 6 offensive boards. They were making it very comfortable. Looked like a Boston subway, to be honest. But I just want to tip my hat to the Celtics to see the traditional white uniforms. Okay, I've seen many Game 7s for that franchise since a kid. They're 25-9. Okay, in Game 7s. It brought back the memories of Russell and Cousy and Bird and Parrish. And the pregame, as a Celtic fan, you want to take the team over and see Red Statue. That's what it seemed like. And it's not one guy, but credit also to Danny Ainge, because now the garden is growing. We're seeing the fruit on the tree because he drafted Grant Williams, Robert Williams, Brown, Smart, and Tatum. So let's not forget that what's happening right now has a lot to do with Danny Ainge's drafts too.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think if you told most people, like, hey, you're going to be without Marcus Smart and Al Horford in Game 1, you would have been like, I don't love your chances in Miami. I don't love your chances. They played well enough, but at the end of the day, I think those two guys make a huge difference for that team against the top seed in the East.
Yeah, and out west, Luka's getting a lot of love right now for them taking care of Phoenix. There's people talking that if he can, let's say it's him, and he's more than a one-man show, but he's pretty much a one-man show.
Yeah.
That if they can climb past Golden State, that they're going to start talking about him being in the top 10 all time in the NBA, which I think is a little early, but just phenomenal. I mean, can Dallas hang with the Warriors? I don't know.
Right. Yeah. I mean, when you think of one-man shows in the NBA, aside from somebody like a Trae Young, Luka Doncic is the guy you think of, or Jokic in Denver. Those two guys to their teams mean more than any other players in the NBA, because you take them off those teams, and I don't even know that they're playoff teams.
Yeah.
So, he's getting that for good reason, but you can't tell me you thought a guy like Spencer Dinwiddie was going to get 30 off the bench in that game to help blow out. I mean, that was the difference in the score. Spencer Dinwiddie's points off the bench were the difference in the score. So I don't know that anyone could have called that either. But yeah, Luka is the guy. I mean, he had 35 in that game. And every time they've won, he's been the best player on the floor for them. And he has to be, or they don't win.
He's averaging 31, 10, and 7 in the playoffs, okay? Mm-hmm. And put your coach's hat on for the two of you, okay, if you're Steve Kerr. Do you zone, two-man, switch? you have to just keep changing it up because he can distribute. There's so many things that he can do when he wants to do it. And if you look at this season against the Warriors, they kept him to only or under 30 points twice. But on March 3rd, he went off 41 and 10 rebounds. So I don't know what Steve has up his sleeve. But frankly, you have to. We've heard enough about stopping and containing. You're not going to stop him. The question is, he's got to get some help. I still don't think will be enough against the Dubs because right now they're licking their chops in San Francisco with the Suns gone. You know that.
Yeah, listen, 1 through 5, 1 through 8, the Warriors are a better team. Luka could. This is the type of team where Luka could have 40, and the Warriors still win.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think they were a match for Phoenix at all, and here they are. The thing I loved about Luka after Game 7. In his presser, someone said, "Do you realize you had as many points as the Suns did at halftime? They each had 27." And he smiled and he said, "Yeah, I did." But if I were the Warriors, I would put Draymond Green over him and just antagonize the holy crap out of him for a few games, push him around a little bit, get in his ear, run your mouth. Green's he's a good guy for that. Okay, that's kind of his game.
Yeah,
that's what I would do. And then, if you get some fouls, you bring in another big body or two that can match up with him and just be physical with him and see how he handles it.
And that's the thing. Even if he scores, it always sounds crazy, but they say like he's going to get his points. He'll probably score 30. But if he scores 30, make it the hardest 30 points he's ever scored in his life and just make him crazy, make him annoyed, get him to tee himself up, all that stuff. Like if you can do that stuff and make him work for a hard 30, it's going to be a long day for the Mavs because then who else for them is Spencer Dinwiddie going to score 30? Who knows? You know what I mean? Jalen Brunson, those guys are going to need to be incredible if you make Luka work for his points.
I would love to see a Mavs win. I think it'd be great theater with Luka getting to the final, but also for Mark Cuban, who's kind of evolved as an owner all these years. He was a pariah getting fined 15, 20 years ago. And now I love the guy. Good on Shark Tank. He would bring a lot of great theater to it. I don't think they're going to win. I think the Warriors will win that series. But it'd be interesting for sure. The one team we haven't really talked about too much is Miami. They just keep devastating.
That keeps happening now.
Yeah.
Well, when you have a 39-14 third quarter, what the hell was that? Okay.
Yeah.
Celtics had that game with 2 guys out at halftime, looking pretty solid at that point, and then Jimmy Butler took over, and that's why they're number 1 in the East. And it's funny how it didn't spend a lot of time talking about Milwaukee. We almost ignored Miami, but 17 of Butler's 41 points came in the third quarter. Yeah, that's a guy who's stud, right? Stud.
Yep. Yeah, and listen, he's the guy who doesn't get enough credit. He's the guy we don't talk about like a Luka, like a Steph, but he's the best player on their team. And 41, okay, 25, 40, that's absurd. And the numbers, I mean, guys, these numbers are ridiculous. 41, oh, by the way, 9 rebounds, 5 assists, 4 steals, 3 blocks. He literally did it all. Like, no one has ever put up that kind of game in the postseason. They've done it before in the regular season, but they haven't stuffed the sheet like that in a postseason game before.
I don't know. What are your thoughts? Miami, Golden State? At this point,
I would say that now, But I think if they get Marcus Smart back and Al Horford back, I think that series can go 6 or 7. I think it becomes very competitive.
Horford is to the Celtics what Chara was to the Bruins, Sean, I would say. I think he has to get back out there. The presence, the history in the playoffs. One thing I want to ask you guys, too, was about the draft lottery show, which is now a show. We looked at the stage, and it looked like Jeopardy. I mean, not 3, but 4 things with the graphics. And here's a GM or an assistant ticket manager standing behind, didn't have to answer any questions. But hats off to Orlando, okay? 3 times they got it right with Shaq, Chris Webber, and Dwight Howard. So they've got Jabari Smith. They've got Banchero, Holmgren. This is a deep draft. Thunder at 2, Rockets at 3. They're not going to be too shabby either, are they?
Yeah. Listen, we were talking about this last night as we had the lottery on. We didn't watch it. I'm taking Jabari. over Banchero and over Chet Holmgren. I'm taking Jabari. Having played against Auburn, watched Syracuse played against Auburn, I'll take that guy every day of the week.
All right. Shall we move to the NHL?
Mm-hmm. Let's do it.
You guys can start because, quite frankly, with my team out, I could care less. How's that?
Oh, well,
No,
they
I'm not
gave it a
interested.
better shot. Listen, when we talked about the matchup, I'm not sure that there were a whole ton of people who thought it would be as competitive as it was. Home teams win, and that's the classic. Home teams win all the games.
Yeah, Carolina was a better team.
Yeah.
You know, it's tough, but you know, now it's for a Bruins fan, it's all about is Bergeron going to come back.
Mhm.
I don't like all the chatter about retirement. That means there's a lot of smoke to that fire. I think he's too young, but he's been in the league a long, long time. Got nominated for his 11th Selkie Award yesterday, finalist as best defensive forward in the league. That's a new record for, I think, all awards.
Mm.
I'd hate to see him go. It'd be just a one more groin shot to Bruins fans for a tough year that was up and down. But, you know, that said, you know, the rest of the playoffs, when I say I don't care, it's hard for me to care because there's so many teams I can't stand.
Yeah, that's
That's
typical
my problem.
hockey fans. Like, oh, my team's out, but I hate that team, that team,
Yeah.
that team, and that team. Like the other night, I was rooting for the Rangers because
Same here.
the Preds are out, so I wrote for Chris was like, I can't believe you're rooting for my Red Sox. Like, or you know what I mean? Like the Rangers to him are the equivalent of the Red Sox for me. And I'm like, I know, but I don't hate the Rangers, so it's hard for me to root against them. I don't like the Penguins. Nobody likes the Penguins.
I hate the Penguins.
Yeah.
I didn't even want to watch hockey Sunday. I didn't want to watch
you
it.
root for the Rangers to get to the next round, and then you want to root against them. I'm like, I can't root for Crosby and the Penguins. No way.
No, I don't like Cindy Crosby. I'm not a fan. He's a diver. I think he's overrated. The Rangers, to be fair, they've never done anything to bother me.
Right.
They've been irrelevant for most
Right.
of my life, except for '94. So,
Mhm.
yeah, Ranger fans. Now I'm going to root for them to beat Carolina because when you beat my team in the playoffs, I now hate you.
Then you want someone else to beat them.
I don't forget.
I get
Tampa,
that.
Florida. You know, who cares?
Well, I want to go up north. You knew I was going to go up north.
Yes,
It's going to be
that's
awesome.
the one.
And I
This
talked
is
to
the
my
one.
friend this morning in Calgary. He's all excited. It's an awesome matchup, a great rivalry. Remember, the Oilers came into the WHA. The Flames came from that hockey hotbed Atlanta, who's 0 for 2. This will be, as it's called, the Battle of Alberta, and they haven't had it since the 80s. Remember, Lanny McDonald won a cup,
Really?
but the Oilers had done so well with that dynasty. So they haven't met in over 30 years in the playoffs, which is amazing. So I really hope this series goes to 7. And then the QE2 highway, as they call it, 186 miles between the cities, will
Unreal.
be very busy with all those orange colors and blue, and should be a great game 7. I hope it makes that far. Go Flames.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, the Flames haven't been to the conference final since they lost in the Cup to Tampa Bay in 2004. The Oilers haven't been to a conference final since they lost to Carolina in the Cup in 2006. So these are two teams. One of them is finally going to get back to the conference final, but it is just, when you read about it, it's like the battle of, it's literal, it's bragging rights, but it's literal like land rights. There is a bar that's like halfway between the two,
Yes.
between Calgary and Edmonton. And they said that they draw a line through the parking lot and the restaurant. And it's like one fan base on one side, one fan base on the other, which is like, that's what it's all about. I love it. That's what
And
it's
Sean,
all
there's
about.
nothing there but the bar. It's all tumbleweeds.
It's
Nothing
yeah,
between the cities.
the Battle of Alberta. If I could pick a second round matchup I wanted to see, that's it.
Mhm.
The other one, I'm gonna enjoy the Avs steamrolling the Blues because again, you beat my team. I don't forget, and I'm still pissed about 2019 and that stupid Glorious song, which I won't listen to anymore. So I think the Avs are still going to win this, but I'm going to root for Calgary because my man Milan Lucic, one of my favorite all-time Bruins, still logging some meaningful minutes for the Flames, and it's going to be a war. It's going to be a war, and I'm a proponent of fighting in hockey, and you're going to see it in that series. I think you'll see it in Florida and Tampa. I think it has its place for people that don't like that, but yeah, when you know teams like that and that sort of rivalry, they're going to fight for every inch of that 200-foot sheet of ice, and that's just going to be fun to watch. And it starts for them tonight.
That Blues-Avs game last night was freaking awesome. It was awesome, but listen, I watched basically just like the end of the third and then overtime, which was great. But it was so unfair to Binnington and what he like. That guy was getting assaulted in the net. He faced 2 times the amount of shots as the opposing goalie and yet lost in overtime. So like, good for him for keeping them in that game. But he faced 54 shots. Blues, the Avs goalie 25.
I was
So
like Jake Ottinger.
Like
Jake Ottinger in Game 7 for Dallas. He hung them in that game against Calgary until Johnny Hockey just put one from a tough angle through his elbow, and that's the way it goes.
Yep.
St. Louis gave up 39 shots in a period. I watched some of that. He looked like the year they won the cup. He looked so dominant, and he also got a little help by the post 4 times. So I don't see this series going 5.
No, and even though that game was good and went to overtime, like if he wasn't outstanding, they would have had 3 or 4 more goals than they had in the first place. And at some point, that gives way. You can only do so much. You have to be able to block shots and not give up so many shots because like that guy can't do that every game.
Can I ask you about that Florida series though? Because I watched that game pretty much in its entirety. Panthers are 0 for 21 in the power play in the playoffs. How the hell is that possible?
Yeah.
They are loaded. They've got Giroux, who has just been phenomenal since he got out of Philly. I mean, I was stunned, but the fact is Vasilevsky is a cup goaltender. He is the man in Tampa Bay, and that team should be tired, Sean, because their off season's about 5 weeks the last 2 years, and here they are right back at it again. What a great series this should be, right?
It's got to, the winning the last few years has got to bite him in the ass at some point, you know.
Yeah.
And Toronto, by the way, you know,
I know.
You're used to it. I was disappointed with Florida last night. I thought that would be a game they'd come out, set the tempo, play their game, and all of a sudden they're on the bad end of a 4-1 loss. They're good enough. They were the President's Cup team, so hopefully they can get back in it in Game 2. I'm going to root for Florida because I won't root for Tampa. But that was a disappointing performance last night for the Panthers. And you know what, Erica, the power play, the Bruins, the Cup year of 11, I think we're 0 for 27 at one point on their first power play through the Montreal series and beyond, and they got it together. So it's happened before, but people are going to take penalties. You have to make them pay.
You say 0 for 21, right, Eric? That's what you gave me?
Yes, yeah.
Tampa Bay was 3 for 4. Just on the goals that they scored. 3 of their 4 goals were power play goals. I don't know what they were total in the game, but when you score 3 power play goals in a game, you're going to win a lot of games.
Oh, and my friend Mary Beth, I wrote her this morning in Toronto. She works at UT, as they call it. She said, don't ask. Don't mention it. I won't go there, but I'm sorry. This has to be their worst letdown. They really thought they would finally get through the most wins ever, the points, the talented roster. You can't blow them up unless you really can't blow them up.
I know they're talking about getting rid of at least one of their big guns.
Oh, one of their writers, I can't remember who, had a tweet the other day saying, well, how can you change it now? You got this guy, this guy, this guy. You got the coach. They keep losing in the first round. Okay, that's not good enough.
Yeah.
That's not good enough. And the one guy I feel bad for, Mitch Marner, always gets dumped on every playoff season because he doesn't usually play well in the playoffs. At least he had 8 points in the first round. And then the poor guy gets carjacked 2 days afterwards in Toronto. They stole his car.
Yeah.
At gunpoint.
Oh, really?
They did. And that's terrible. I don't know if they knew who he was. I think it sounded like it was
Probably
an isolated incident. But
doesn't he remind you of Bergeron, the way he back checks? He's really their Bergeron, don't you think?
Bergeron wins.
Hey-o.
Sorry.
Hey-o.
True.
Fluto, do you guys remember, who did Fluto say of the Canadian teams? Didn't he put Toronto last? Did he put Calgary first?
Yes, Calgary, then Edmonton, then Toronto, I believe.
He's right so far. We'll have to have him back on once he nails it. If Calgary beats Edmonton, we're going to have him back on.
Yes.
Now I'll be watching Fluto later because Don Sweeney's going to give his general manager state of the Bruins thing, and I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to be kind on Twitter.
Don't get suspended.
He should be fired.
Sweeney?
Should never been hired. Yeah, he's terrible.
Don't get suspended.
Soft. He's soft. No. All right, whiteboards?
Whiteboards?
Go for it.
Let me go.
Go ahead, Ash.
All right, I'm going back to horse racing. We did a little bit of horse racing last week with Gardner. Rich Strike. Here's the deal. The ownership, the trainer, they do not owe horse racing fans SHIT.
Say it. Say it.
They don't know a shit. Like, why do we feel like we're entitled to this horse running in the Preakness? Why is it automatic? Like it's an automatic. I get it. I want him to run in the Preakness. We all want to see a Triple Crown. It was an 80-1 long shot that likely, and I know people, likely has no chance of winning the Preakness. And these people want to stick to a 5-week spanned out workout because they think that's what's best for the health of their horse. So you know what? Screw off. Like, just get over it. It's not, this horse does not have to run in the Preakness for you, me, or anyone else. The connections don't want to run the horse. They're doing what's best for the horse. Thank God someone in the game of horse racing is doing what's best for the horse. Because unless your name is Bob Baffert, these opportunities come around once in a lifetime. So I'm sure they thought long and hard about it. And they decided, you know what? We're not going to run our 80-1 long shot who gave us the memory of a lifetime. We're not going to run him again. We'll do something down the line. Thanks for doing the right thing. And to all you horse racing fans out there who feel entitled, shut up.
I love it. I think of Seinfeld when he got challenged to the race by, I can't remember the guy's name, which is going to really upset some of my sign, when he said, I choose not to run. Good for them. Mm-hmm. Look, it's made. Why tarnish it? I'd retire it out to stud right now. I wouldn't even bother with it, Belma. I'd be done with it.
Yeah.
Right? You had your moment.
I said this to Chris too. I'm not sure that one Kentucky Derby gets you stud fees that are exorbitant. Like, I don't know that people really believe just because of that. Either way.
I'm glad they're not going to run.
Yeah.
I don't see any reason to do that.
No,
Yeah.
lightning is in a bottle once. It's not going to happen again. But I agree with you, Ashley. The owners are doing the right thing on this. Yeah. They're thinking of the horse. Congrats. Thank you. We've already made profit on our 30K.
Right.
All right. I will bring you to Darlington Raceway. Notice the weird shape of this place, okay? So my hat's in honor of two things. Last week's M&M podcast, of course, and also Kyle Busch of Joe Gibbs Racing, because he is ending his partnership with M&M after 14 years. We talk about ancient cathedrals in hockey, basketball, baseball, football. I get it. But it's time to give some love to a legendary historic edifice. You have Fenway, Wrigley, Soldier Field. It's Darlington Raceway. Happy 72nd birthday, okay? Woo-hoo. It's a racetrack built for NASCAR in Darlington, South Carolina. It's called the Lady in Black, the track too tough to tame because of that unique, it's a unique egg-shaped design. And it's very difficult conditions. You know, try to shift down when you've got to take that different turn. So I would expect there's a lot of shifting going on. So like Fenway, it's not a cookie cutter, and the egg design is its own signature. Joey Nagano won the Goodyear 400 on Mother's Day weekend at Darlington. And Harold Brannigan, hats off to him. He was a retired crew racer that went to the Indy 500 in 1948. He said, you know what? I think we could pull off a big track in Darlington. He was right. So in an era of new arenas and stadiums, hats off to the Lady in Black, the grand old dame, and the track too tough to tame.
Love it. I learned something new today. Thanks, Eric.
There you go. By the way, Jerry's opponent was Duncan Meyer. For those Seinfeld fans, I did remember it. And, of course, the judge was their former teacher, Mr. Bevilacqua. Anyway.
Wow.
New swag here. Got this company from Pugsley's Pit. Baseball's last dive bar, the Oakland Coliseum. Here's my coffee mug.
Nice.
And speaking of the Coliseum, I'm going to make a bold prediction here. The Oakland Athletics are going to win the American League West this year.
Oh, Jesus.
No, seriously. We have a rallying point other than just hatred for the owner. Whoop. Watch that microphone. It's called the Rally Possum. Just like the Rally Monkey got the Angels over the hump in 2002, it's going to be the Rally Possum who made his way into the Athletics press box the other night. That's the lastdimebar.com actually has Rally Possum t-shirts and coffee mugs. I might get a mug. I can never have enough. But it's our new rallying cry. There was a tweet by an A's fan to A's president Dave Cavall. F you, Dave. Respond to my messages, please. Saying, are you guys going to relocate the possum when Howard Terminal ever gets built? It's part of the family after just one appearance. So there you go. That's our rallying cry. Rally Possum, Oakland Athletics 2022 AL West champs.
Are they going to make stuffed animals that you can swing around by the tail?
We should get Dan back for some NIL trademark.
Yeah.
There you go.
Boston
Because
Garden had a monkey.
the Angels had the monkeys that like hung around the neck.
We need the possum.
So it was a live possum that got into the press box.
We need the possum.
The old garden that's no longer with us, unfortunately, had a monkey that escaped in the zoo and was in the garden loose for over 10 years, living off peanuts and stuff. So maybe they should have a chat.
No, we're on our way. We're on our way. And the A's won last night.
Possum.
Rally Possum.
Awesome.
Kevin Smith hit a home run last night.
Did he?
Yeah, he did. 2-run homer.
Good for him. He's
Yep.
Greenbush finest. Inductee into the Columbia High School Hall of Fame last weekend.
What's that?
Inducted into the Columbia High School Hall of Fame last weekend.
I'm headed to Columbia High School today.
Awesome. Awesome stuff.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us. M&M across the board. Ashley, Eric, Sean, you can find us every week. Apple, YouTube, Spotify, Twitter at MMMATB1. We will tweet out the link,
Rally
post
Possum.
it. Go A's, hashtag Rally Possum. I can't wait to see that hashtag in the tweet that you put out with all your hashtags.
Absolutely.
All right.
All
We'll
right.
see you next week.
Be good.